Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to rise and heal to a level beyond what you ever thought possible or thought you needed, then do we have the Blue Mind Resilience show for you. Today I'll be talking with a dear friend and hero, the true keeper of the sea, Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, a visionary entrepreneurial scientist, renowned marine biologist, voracious earth and idea explorer, wild water advocate, and the best-selling author of one of my favorite must-read books and documentaries, Blue Mind. Today I want to talk with him about a topic that's near and dear to both of our hearts, rising from the ashes. What it means, how we do it, and why it's most important to have a mission now more than ever. Plus, we'll talk about what in the world is a fire blender. So welcome back to the show, Jay. Are you ready to shine?
I am so ready. I need some serious shining, and you're my shining buddy. So thanks for meeting and talking and maybe healing together a little bit. It's a pleasure to see you.
It so goes both ways, and a mighty woohoo.
Yes, thank you. I'll give you a semi-mighty version of that. Maybe we'll work up to the full-on version. Yeah.
And you know, this is the first time today I did this because in moving boxes yesterday, I managed to break some ribs.
Yikes.
It's part of the blender we're both going through.
Yes.
And I'm like, wow, I got my hands up. All right.
I won't ask you to do that again. Just keep your hands down.
No. When the urge comes to me, I have to do that. For those who are curious, I haven't heard it yet, but what the panting is in the background.
That's George.
This is George, and George is with you everywhere now.
He is. He's my. Little does he know, he's my therapy dog for good, and he's a 140-pound Newfoundland, brown in color, somewhat bear-like. He's good at breathing. He's very, whether we're in the water together or here in the kitchen, he's got a good solid set of lungs. He can swim forever. But anyway, he's by my feet, and his breathing will probably. He's gotten a little exercise. Breathing will probably settle down. Yeah. So yeah, it'll keep the beat, I guess.
I like it, and I must ask, please forgive me, but how is he around roosters?
Oh, he's great. He loves all animals. He's pretty gentle. He's big and a little scary if you're not familiar with really big dogs. Yeah. But he's so gentle and so stoic. So the breed, the Newfoundland, is kind of known to be stoic and water loving and ready to rescue, ready to serve, basically. And heavy breathing and somewhat drooly. I guess those are the other aspects.
You're good on the heavy breathing. The drooly part might take Jessica out of the equation.
Yeah. And you just have to have a spare towel handy kind of all the time. It's George's towel.
Which, that's us with the rooster at the moment, but that's a whole nother story.
Roosters have no other factor going. Yeah.
They have this thing about them where they will drink lots of water and then regurgitate it to digest their food outside and then eat it back in. And we haven't figured out how to train that one yet.
On command, maybe it would be. I don't think you can train it to not do it, but maybe just kind of harness it a little bit and direct it.
Regurge on demand. Okay, so let's go from regurge on demand.
Yeah. For context, I wrote a letter to my daughter who the day after she left for college, our home burned down, and I tried to call and talk to her about it, and I couldn't. She couldn't really. We couldn't really speak. It was just kind of one of those topics that she was crying, and I couldn't really speak. So I turned to the written word, which is my kind of what I do when I can't speak, and wrote this letter. And then it kind of got shared, and then next thing you know, it went around the world a few times. And I think the reason why, it's very specific and very personal, but it's I think a lot of people are feeling some kind of fire burning their world down right now, literally and metaphorically, and I think it just maybe spoke to people in some way. So that's the context of this letter and why I wrote it. Should I just read it?
Go for it, and then I'll ask some background on how this took place, and we'll learn how we can all heal together from this.
Yeah. It says, "My dearest Wallace Grace, we built your home around you when you were still inside of your mother. We built it stronger and more sturdy than it needed to be. I thought a lot about every piece of wood and stone, every knob and switch. We filled it with our books, musical instruments, and interesting animal bones. I imagined you looking down after a bath through the railing upstairs. People who visited always asked about the overbuilt stoutness and soulfulness of our home. I always said that I built this house around my baby girl to protect and raise her and her sister, to be strong and healthy. I hoped that it would instill a sense for natural quality, authenticity, and design. Your house in the Redwoods, by the creek and ocean, lasted nearly 19 years. It survived fires, droughts, floods, and earthquakes. It also survived some of our great parties, our friends' weddings, holiday gatherings, and many sleepovers. It held thousands of visitors, beautiful music, salmon dinners, and rich, deep conversations. You were there for all of it. I had hoped that it would be yours someday, and I was working hard to keep it. The day after you left for college, it burned to the ground in a wildfire caused by lightning in the most beautiful storm I have ever seen. I believe it served its original purpose fully and completely. All that remains standing is the chimney and fireplace that warmed us as we slept. It was built tall of stone to last for millennia. You are strong, thanks to this home. You carry the memories of our canyon. You are made of Mill Creek water, the fruit from our trees, Swanton berries, and Pacific salmon. You are my wild child. I'm so proud of you. I wish I could have protected our home from the fires, but I couldn't, and I didn't. Please carry the sweet memories with you wherever you go. I love you, Peanut. Stay safe, study hard, and come home often for hugs, please. Love, Dad." So I sent that to her and hoping that it would, I don't know, ease the news and give her a frame for the pain. I guess, I guess there's an aspect in those moments of not knowing what the heck to do, really, and just shooting from the gut or the heart or the soul and just letting, I cried my way through writing that note and then didn't edit it and sent it. But I think the house did its job. The home did its job. She is safely in Syracuse, New York, and in her dorm and studying sustainable design and psychology. And so that's our girl Grace. And yeah.
What gave you the prescience, the forethought to build such a mighty home?
I thought a lot about home and the concept, and when we found this location, and I don't know, it's just the way I do things, I guess. Our rule was build it well or don't do it. And so, I mentioned the switches, this we wouldn't put a switch in the wall that you didn't find joyful to click every time. So, nothing against Home Depot, but we weren't just swinging by a Home Depot and buying stuff off the shelf and throwing it up. It was everything, every board, every piece of stone, every switch, every light fixture was, thoughtful, I guess, in our way. And it took a while. It was a slow go, and there was a time, it was like, why don't you have light switches? Because we didn't find the right ones yet. Why don't you have lights? And why don't you have rugs on the hardwood floors? And the answer was my 102-year-old grandmother, when she passed, I was sent her rugs from the East Coast. And she had some beautiful ancient rugs from Iran and Iraq that she had gotten a long time ago. And so I didn't buy rugs because she told me I had rugs and I just didn't have them yet. So the house was like that. Everything in it was meaningful and thoughtful, or it wasn't there. That's just kind of how we approached it. And raised the kids in that space, the wood was old growth, Douglas fir, upcycled, recycled, reclaimed. So these ancient trees, built in the ancient stone, and, carefully put that all together around, at the time, my baby girl, who wasn't born yet, inside of her mom, Dana. So the house itself was a journey, and making it a home and filling it with great conversations and music and musicians and friends and good meals and good wine. And, and it was built to wear well. So, people would say, oh, sorry, if there's a scratch or a spill or even sometimes a burn on the wood. I was like, it's okay. Just rub it a little bit and it will blend in with and it was aging well. It was a more soulful house with every scratch. And, and there's that sense of it's just stuff. It's the material world. Let it go. And then your brain goes to no, it was as close to a living being as a house could be, really, because it just was imbued with, memories and good times. And it, that's not unique. We hopefully all have some experience of that with our houses and homes at some point along the way. So great loss, to a kid that knew only that place as home. The day after she left for college, the timing was wild. So my heart was broken, and the devastation is really truly horrific to witness for all of the people who are dealing with fires right now and hurricanes for that matter. There was also this sense of gratitude for, what it was for a while, and what it, it did its job. It raised our kids very well, and then burned, like literally just, there's just some metal and stone, This is a stunning, really stunning thing to witness. All of your material accumulations for a lifetime, every book that I've held on to, and every, my baseball from my childhood signed by the New York Yankees team that I love on the shelf, and just and photographs and photo albums and feathers, from all the birds that dropped their feathers in that canyon. And here you go. Just reduced to ashes. It's deeply humbling and disturbing, really, but also fascinating. And that the juxtaposition of those emotions, like in one mind, is confusing. Hence the term fire blender is accurate. And so, and I thought, I want to talk to you. It's one of the first things I thought after the fire. I was like, because last time we spoke in this venue, it was shortly after my father had passed away, and it was, a different kind of fire blender, and so, and I reflected on that, just chatting with you. You're such a buoyant spirit, and you know the depths of life and pain and resilience yourself. I just thought, hey, let's talk to my brother.
Thank you. Big hugs.
Yeah.
So many directions I can go with this. I want to go with this, but first off, a crazy thought, which is I teach a process called automatic writing, where you basically turn your journaling into kind of a channeling process. Have you written to the spirit of your home yet?
Not yet, but that's it's a good idea. And my first instinct was to write to Grace, and to go to where our home was with our daughter Julia, who's here with me in California, and spend some time with her there. And I think, I will do some more writing and journaling, and that, in that regard, one of the big losses, all of my journals, I had this stack of motley looking books of all shapes and forms and haggard, covers, and books that I just dragged all over the world with me for, being a writer or just one who likes to write. I've filled a lot of journals, and, those are ash. So, that'll come through probably in some way there.
It's interesting because, and I want to hear what the experience was like when you went home, because you said, I saw an interview, it still feels like home. But a vacuum has been created. And my guess is there's so much more writing on such a deep level that's going to come out. You don't even have to try, but you'll, just like that letter, there's a reason that touched so many people's soul, and you're like, I didn't even edit it. The words are like a tsunami now that are going to be pushing through you because there is space for them.
Yeah, I better buy some blank journals, I guess is what you're saying, right?
A bunch.
A bunch. Yeah, the experience, everything felt familiar. Everything, all of the things that remain, and all of the trees, all the burned trees, and the sky, and the road. And then at the same time, everything felt wrong and effed up at the same time. So it felt familiar and intimate and horribly wrong at the same time. Everything I looked at, I built it. So I know the materials. I remember the screws that you couldn't see that were behind the scenes that are now laid bare in front of you. Remember them. I remember the choices of screw lengths and gauges, and and the overbuilt stoutness of it that was behind the scenes that now is just there, the metal aspects, and little broken pieces of pottery and that the kids had made, or silverware, and so everything was familiar and intimate, and everything was wrong at the same time, which was just just so incongruent, really, and exhausting. I think that's your brain is making sense of all the patterns that are familiar, yet they're all different than they should be. And so it's almost like you're relearning your house, a different version of your house that has been through a fire blender and then just spit out. So as a student of mind and brain and neuropsychology, I sort of observed myself observing the weirdness and the horror and the beauty and the super interesting. We had a 1954 Airstream trailer parked near the house that I thought I would find a fireplace and a shell of an Airstream, and instead I found a fireplace and molten aluminum, which was just, I just hadn't thought it through that, at a little over 1200 degrees, aluminum just melts. And so the Airstream melted in its place. And so there's just puddles of, re-solidified aluminum, which was kind of horrifying, but also super fascinating, so that experience of, rediscovering your home in a completely different format, so strange, so just like tweaks you hard, and all of our neighbors are having the same experience. I mean, up the canyon, the Wilsons, Ben Wilson, who was born in his home, and he's 90.
Wow.
And I went back when he went back and saw him. And my heart breaks mostly for him. Our family, of course, but his connection to that place. He's seen all of those redwoods grow up over 90 years, and has been a good steward of the canyon and a really good friend and a grandfather to our kids, not to mention his own kids and grandkids. Just can't imagine what that's like. So just I think, like you say, it just cracks open a whole new chapter of living. Yeah. That I easily hope. I wished I missed out on it. Kind of. I was out there and I was taping up the trim to do some replastering, some patching and some stuff, and that was my plan, was to stay up real late. I had, opened a bottle of wine, poured a glass, and had the speaker playing some nice music I like, and I was going to work as late as I could and on that project, and got the neighbor came by, Ian, and said, "We're getting out, it's time to go." And I was like, "Oh, I got some plaster work to do. Maybe I'll spend the night, and see if I can maybe stay and just fight off the fire, But after I got a little better look at what was coming, I was like, okay, the plaster work can wait. Yeah. Fortunately, the wine was terrible, so I only had a sip, and I did not pursue that.
What was the storm like, and how did you know this thing was coming?
The storm was beautiful, and it was, I've never seen anything like it in California, at least. I've seen a lot of tropical storms in, my work around the world, sea turtle beaches and big, just the big storms with the big lightning that just hit hard. And it was like a California version of that, which was really strange because we don't have those kinds of storms here. And so it was unseasonably hot for several days, really still. And then this was not even a forecast storm. I mean, at least on my weather app did not warn me of it. It just whipped up, and apparently there were 11,000 dry strikes of lightning on the earth here in this area, which ended up starting something like 600 fires, and just threw, the system for a loop. Some people will start pointing fingers, but it's not the kind of thing you could have been adequately prepared for.
Yeah.
And so those fires started, and our home was one of the first to go in the state, probably. And the fires are still burning. They're calling it a gigafire, which means it's well over 1 million acres at this point around the state, and at various percentages of containment.
Yeah.
So a fire complex started by a storm because of the dry strike lightning on the land, on a backdrop of very dry forest, due to the weather and the changing climate. So that, frankly, I told Grace, her home was taken by a beautiful storm and beautiful lightning, which is something that's easier to live with than some yahoo throwing a cigarette butt out the window.
Yeah.
Or some careless act of negligence that, or disrespect. You can't blame the lightning for being disrespectful. It's lightning.
Yeah.
It does its thing, and always has, always will. So, that's beautiful in its way, and we're not the first people to see their home burn after lightning hits the earth. So not the last either, right?
What are the trees like? Because I've spent, every time I get out there, I'm hanging out in the Redwoods. And by in the Redwoods, I mean inside of a Redwood as much as I can. Go, vortex, cool.
Yeah.
And you'll always see burn marks, because usually the forest bed burns and the mighty Redwoods survive that. But that's not a 1,200 or, if glass burned, a 2,400 degree fire.
Yeah. We'll see. So you're right. The Redwoods are the epitome of resilient beings. And the forest itself is a moonscape other than the Redwoods right now, and our fireplace, which is just sitting there. They're burned, as far up as you can see. I mean, if you stand at the bottom of one of the trees and look up, it's not just 20 or 30 feet of the trunk. It's as far as you can see. I can't even imagine the scene in the canyon as the fire came through. And I'm glad I left. My fire extinguisher and my hose would have been just silly. And those trees, they're shocked, they're stressed, their leaves are brown. They will probably drop most of their leaves, and I expect by spring, start putting out new leaves and look like, a dark, burnt, black redwood tree with bright green, fresh leaves. I can't wait to see it. And that's what they do. That's how they do it. And, down below where our mess is, my job is to clean up my mess, basically, and plant some meadow. And then think about what we might do next. But first and foremost, my mind goes to making sure my mess doesn't go into the creek.
Yeah.
by the next rain, which is just a big project. But those trees are still amazing, and some of them may not make it. Some of the smaller ones, and we'll help that process along by really removing or falling any of them that are going to fall that could harm somebody, and just putting them on the ground so the beetles can have them.
Yeah.
And the fungi and the bacteria, and that'll do its job. But the redwood forest is it's a privilege to live in it, and part of its history is this. It's these lightning caused fires, or that's how it goes. So yeah.
It makes me think cleansing, reset, sort of like we go to bed at night and the mind prunes and clears out the old to make way for the new. And you happen to bear witness, in a sense, and be Jay the Redwood, who is still standing and has been cleansed and pruned.
Yeah, very much so. I feel pruned.
Where does the mind go? And all I can think of as you're talking about neuroscience is disassociation. When you're there, it's a meditative experience, but you just have to step way back in order to, my guess is, even be able to breathe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You step back from your own mind in a way and observing, and try to make sense of that, because it's just so confusing. And if you felt, I don't tend to be a control-oriented person just with life. I've learned from water to flow and to accommodate, but learning from fire is a different thing.
Well, it has a flow.
Yeah, flow. Learning from the cleansing, destructive aspect of it, while water does that too. There's some similarities for sure. I'm still processing what I've learned and will learn. And the pain is, it's painful. It's a pain. The loss, the grief. Fortunately, not a loss of the lives of our family members or our friends and our neighbors, or our animals, but certainly the loss of the wildlife that didn't get out and the trees that burned. But the last fire we dealt with there was in 2009, and it was just 7,000 acres. It's not a small fire. And it came around our house, and it was the house was defended. And 4 years later, Grace did her middle school science fair project on post-fire rejuvenation, basically, and repropagation of the pines and the manzanita. And so, she's very. I encouraged her to do her science fair project on something related to the ocean and the tide pools down the road.
Yeah.
And she said, "No, Dad, that's your thing. I'm going to study fire." Wow. And the first day of her science fair project, this is 6th grade, we went out to the forest and we just covered ourselves in charcoal from the burnt trees. And I have a picture of her coming home, just literally completely covered in charcoal. No data was collected on day one. And then subsequent trips, we went out and set some transects and collected data. And she looked at how pines, they need the fire to activate the seeds that then regrow. It's a requirement. It's part of their way of living, their design. And the manzanita, they grow back from the burl that's underground. It's protected in the ground. It's like the root ball. And that starts to grow back from that deep root ball, and then it comes back. And so she looked at the two different strategies and how quickly they occurred. It was a beautiful study. She did well at science fair with that. All her idea. I just carried her stuff. And now fast forward 11 years since then, and fire came through and, took our home. But she has an understanding of what the land will do and what the trees will do and the resilience of the landscape and nature. And it's really deep inside of her. And I think she's a strong kid as a result. And so I'm in awe of her and her life and the things that she's done and things that she's doing, and that's why I wrote that letter too, just to let her know how proud we are of what she's doing and her choices, and that her home is where she is. Home's in her heart.
Yeah, the home is in here, and it's interesting because clearly I never see very spiritual. I never see timing as an accident. I never see it as an accident. Uncomfortable and what would be the best term for it? Not the timing that we would ever choose. However, particularly when you see timing like this, there's a reason, and this is certainly a launching pad in her life. With all of your work, it makes me think that we are both the water and we are our land. And it is very... Well, important's an interesting way to put it. I like to say it's very important that we find our land, but as Dr. Richard Louv put it with Last Child in the Woods, your land can be, a little ditch in the city right outside your home. It could be one tree coming up through a crack in the cement with a metal grid around it. You are, your daughter is especially, but you are a walking, talking expression of your land. And so it's a very interesting question I'm going to ask, but are you a pine or are you a manzanita?
Good question. I love that question. I may have answered this differently if you'd asked me 10 days ago. I would have said I don't need a fire to activate my growth. That it comes from deep inside and always has, and is very sort of grounded. Yeah. So I would have said manzanita. But I would just put that on hold and say TBD, possibly pine. There are some things that this fire and losing our home may help bring to fruition, or just like close down because they're gone. That might have been just lingering loose ends, and but things that I held onto. So in that regard, just the fire activating the seed for something new growth, new seed, new growth, not from the deep old roots. So I'm going to go with an activated pine seed sitting on top of a deep manzanita root.
He's choosing choice C. I like it.
Yeah, all of the above. Yes, and usually that's my answer. But yeah, the deep roots are there, and the growth that comes back from the deepest parts of who you are and what you've experienced is just there. And this is an opportunity, to say, okay, what else? What's what's been in that pine cone waiting for the fire? I don't know. And I don't, I really didn't know 10 days ago. I was just in shock, and now I have some inklings of ideas. But I've been thinking about water a lot for years, and I'm thinking about fire more now. And I had thought about the comparison between the mesmerizing, transformative experience of watching fire, when it's controlled in a circle or in a place.
Yeah.
But I had thought about that and compared it to water and music and how it does what it does and helps us have these transformative experiences. I hadn't thought about it in its wild, destructive, cleansing form the way I had thought about water. So there's something there to learn and share. And I think the pain of that loss, loss of everything, all the things, not everything, but every single thing. Mm-hmm. I think opens me up to be able to relate to others who have had that experience of loss more now. So we'll see where that goes too.
It's interesting. Two thoughts come to mind, and we'll double back to the first one I'm going to mention, which is Dr. Dawson Church. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work. He's written The Genie in Your Genes. He's written Bliss Brain and lots of books on EFT tapping in the field of neuroscience as well. And you can't plan this stuff. I had him on Friday, and his book Bliss Brain opens with his house burning to the ground minus the chimney in Santa Rosa in 2017, and he losing every single one of his possessions. Even the he had a 40-year-old he had a car collection, and he had a 40-year-old Silver Spirit Rolls Royce, and even that the flying lady on the front reduced to a puddle. You couldn't find anything left of it. Even the glass melted on it, and he had what was it? Jensen Healy aluminum wheels had turned into puddles. But one cool thing, and I'm surprised I'm going to go there, but I saw you saying there's nothing left, and you picked up like a steel something turtle from the ashes, which is appropriate for you and appropriate for me. And he actually found 2 weeks later, when they were allowed back in to a sludgy pond, he found his pet turtle.
Wow.
Still alive. That's
interesting, because my cousin's house up the hill also burned. And the first photo I saw of it, if you zoom, and the little tiny thing that's sitting there, it was a very realistic looking tortoise sculpture that was on a wall from the garden. So there's that, there's the turtle.
Dr. Church, Dawson talked about how he had these old pictures from his mom from when she passed away in the garage. And he had no idea, and it drove him insane because he didn't want these things anymore, but he felt guilty, and so he couldn't get rid of them. And then it was like a giant Etch-a-Sketch, and now he's 3 years later, and everybody's path is unique. It's interesting, though, that I had him on Friday, you on Tuesday, and his healing process of that lightening that has allowed him, we'll say, to be the pine.
Right. Yeah. I would love to speak with him and hear your conversation with him, because I'm and come back and talk to you in 3 years and see where we are.
You got it. Yeah. And I'll put you in touch. So the other term that came to mind, Jessica and I, we tend to live near volcanoes. I don't know why. We have one in front of us that is extinct. We have a one behind it that supposedly science says isn't a volcano, but there's volcanic rock in our land. It's everywhere. You can't avoid it. You trip over it. And so we're sitting on a volcano, and we lived on the side of Haleakala and Maui. We spent a little time in the Big Island where literally we would have fissures of, because we had a neighbor who lived in what's called a puka. And a puka was a hole. And her home was in a puka where the lava went to both sides of her home within 100 yards and raised everything but the trees where she lived. And yet her home stood. It's fascinating. And so we went right to the edge of the lava, to these fissures, and would watch it. It wasn't the National Geographic exploding lava. We would watch it melt and ooze and then consume the land. And you'd have to step back because you'd be like a foot in front of it. You hear a crackle pop. You step back, it falls in. We shouldn't have been there. But we're like a moth to a flame. But then Pele, she goes into the ocean. And that term Pele comes to mind for me, which is that connection between fire or earth and water. And I see Jay.
I'm thinking of, that fire, earth, water connection when we do get rain here, which we need, of course. The ashes, will wash to the ocean, and that will bring nutrients. It'll bring also pollutants. It'll be very messy, but those nutrients will go into the ocean from the land in the form of ashes. But that's part of it, right? That's some of the trees that are semi-dead will fall, will slide. The redwoods will persist. The landscape will be altered yet again, not just from the fire, but also from the rains and the slides. So we have a couple of years of that. Very different from a lava flow, but in its way, kind of, similar. And so that's what's ahead here with the landscape and the land. And, you can't fight that. You really can't fight that.
It's cool, though, that you have, I'm interested what your long-term mission is. And I can see what your short-term mission is for healing the land, for corralling the pollutants. And I've got to think that helps tremendously.
Yeah, that, it is, you said earlier, my mission is just stronger and deeper. And in a way, that's the Manzanita roots. The work I've been doing for my entire adult life is more clear, more important to me personally and to my family and to all of the people who need it. Need to know that our waters are a source of, wellness and healing and sacred space to, protect and go to cool your red mind or stay away from gray mind burnout.
Yeah.
So that's just more clear, and rather than being a reset, destroying that mission, it's more of a repurposing in a way, or just a reminder that, okay, yeah, that's good work. Keep doing that. While at the same time, strangely, my to-do list on all the house projects and various writings and various forms of disrepair that I've wanted to work on, they're gone. Like, there's no to-do list. There are no drafts. At least in the journal form.
Yeah.
There are no things to be sorted. That's just, the to-do list got real short in some ways, which is useful, I guess, in clarifying. And, we had a crawl space that had some stuff in it that I just needed to go through it. I needed to pull it all out. I needed to, recycle some things and sort some things, and it was just on my mind. So, no crawl space anymore.
Yeah.
It's that's taken care of. So there's lots of best-selling books about decluttering your living space. Yep, got that. That's not exactly following the Marie Kondo. Is that
Yep.
her name?
But this is
Not
efficient.
yeah, super. Wow. Yeah.
Before I dive into resilience, and then we'll start to wind this down.
Yeah.
Have you spent time in the water yet?
I sure have. Yeah. Yeah. It's a daily ritual, and it took on a whole new meaning this past week here. So,
what has it meant to you now?
Everything I knew as a scientist about how water can soothe our souls. So sometimes when I speak about blue mind, I remind people that this is not a new idea. This is an ancient idea that is prevalent across all sacred texts and all spiritual traditions, in fact. And if I'm speaking to an audience that resonates deeply with the Judeo-Christian tradition, I'll quote the 23rd Psalm, which I'll paraphrase. It says, "When the hits the fan, get your butt down to the water, saith the Lord." That's my paraphrase, but it's the famous psalm, which means song.
Yeah.
It was written 3,000 years ago by King David. Yeah. That begins, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil."
Yeah.
And goes on to say, lay down by the water and soothe your soul. So I've quoted that many times to help people understand that blue mind science is an ancient science. And blue mind practice has been around for a long time and well observed and encoded in sacred texts among all traditions. And so I thought of that actually when I was swimming. And, the valley of the shadow of death, that means something completely different to me now. Mm-hmm. I always thought about it as, metaphorically a really bad day or a really bad year or a really bad stage in your life. Mm-hmm. Walking through the valley of the shadow of death and walking up our valley, our canyon, back to the house that felt a bit like the shadow of death had come through, and tried to take everything, taken a lot. Not our lives and not the Redwoods, but pretty much everything else. And so that psalm says, "Get in the water and soothe your soul." So that was top of mind, you could say, when I got in the water and soothed my soul by swimming. And so if you're hearing the background noises, it's George drinking water on cue. So
I'm just going, please let it not be a toilet.
Yeah.
I like that because that's on cue. We've been having the fires around us. First 12,500 acre one that made it to 1.5 miles. And then at the beginning of the month, the 170,000 one that was several towns down the road. And then a 30 some odd thousand that made it, I guess, when you count the hop, skip, and a jump, to 4 miles from here. Mm. And our desire at that point is get us in a raft, put us in a river, and then rent that RV. And where do we want to go? Because it was going to be all sorts of places, including the Southwest. No, just get us to the water.
Yeah, there it is. It's about as deep a concept as a living being can hold, in that, George, sorry.
Bless you, George.
Speaking at living beings, whether, we're talking about, banana slugs or foxes or dogs or humans or roosters, the first instinct is, where's the water? Mm-hmm. In any fire, literal or metaphoric. The mere suggestion that there's no water makes our mouths immediately dry without even thinking.
It freaks us out. Quite literally, it sends the nervous system into that sympathetic fight or flight.
It's right. It's fast and deep, and it doesn't require any logic or reason. And it's it's a deep response that all living beings have to water or lack of water, and to recognize that and to honor it and then participate in it is a life skill, and so to your question, I guess that's my mission, is to explain that particular life skill as well as I can to 8 billion people, to help them live better lives and take better care of each other and the earth. And that's about as simply as I can put it, but this fire clarifies it in ways that you're helping me understand literally as we speak, I think.
It's been so bone dry out here that I joked with a UPS driver before the big fire hit. I said, I feel like I could stare at the vegetation behind me and light it on fire. And he said, I feel like I could turn on my high beams and things would light up.
Yeah.
And that just...
And yeah, that's that context of the lightning that came through is just like fire right up the coast all night long. Yeah.
And I imagine it has you thinking, oh man, do we have to get busy?
There's an immediate busyness in my responsibility to the piece of land that I'm stewarding, and then there's the global busyness and urgency, and yet at the same time my approach to things is usually not hectic and rushed, and there's an urgency, but there's also got to be a thoughtfulness and a collaborative, creative aspect. And the fight or flight response is useful, but not sustainable. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of maybe one of the things I hope to share with my colleagues is, even when your house burns down, don't run around with your hair and your pants on fire screaming. That's not the, well, some would argue that's what we should be doing, but I'm not at my best when I'm screaming and running around. And very few of us are. And if we stay in that screaming at each other mode, we will in fact stay in the screaming at each other mode while things burn.
That's a red mind.
We won't fix much. And that's what we've been doing for a while. Whether you're talking, systematic change to society or politics or business or, that doesn't work. And there's urgency. That's the challenge, is to honor the urgency, recognize the stress and anxiety that it causes. Breathe. I love talking to you because you're just like, let's just breathe for a minute here before we start talking. And it's just so simple, and there's no mumbo jumbo, and science would say you're absolutely right. If you needed to know that, which you didn't, but just happens to be true, that my friend James Nestor just wrote a wonderful book called Breath. Mm-hmm. And it's about this. It's about the science of our breathing, and how most of us do it wrong throughout our lives. And we don't talk about it very well, in school. So there's that aspect, and that, you were talking about, the smoke and just the simple act of breathing in your home being something that was labored and tricky and maybe even dangerous. And we just take that for granted. But breathing well and breathing right in order to think more clearly is part of it, so.
Thank you. Just a few last
Yeah.
questions here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to tie one together. What does breath and resilience mean to you?
Well, I've been working on my next book, and it's on the concept of groove, which is when we flow together.
Yeah.
So a flow state is an individual state of sort of well-being and success and performance. And when we flow together, I refer to that as groove. And I was struggling a little bit. So the 5 ingredients of groove that I've defined, and the 5th one is resilience. And I have 4 great examples for the first 4 ingredients, and I was struggling to find a poignant example of resilience. And then this happened, and your question happened. And so that's it. It's fire. It's the experience of catastrophic fire, and elements of this conversation we've been having. And so, just in a very personal way and writerly way and project-oriented way, this fire is the answer to that question of what is the resilience case study that I will eventually write about. And it's that how does the forest respond to fire and still be a forest? And how do we in our human communities respond to fire and still be a community, and or as a family and as individuals? And so the word resilience just keeps popping up. It's a very popular concept these days, but it's just sort of hitting, and it's on the cover of just the newspaper on my dining room table, my kitchen table right now is all about fire, and then right there at the bottom of the page in bold letters is the word fire, fury, resilience, and that's the 5th ingredient in groove. And
I have a fun connection to make for you as well. There's a gentleman by the name of Howard Martin. He's the co-founder of an organization called HeartMath, which you might be familiar with.
Yes, of course.
When you're talking about groove, you're talking about one of the pieces is how do we flow together? One of the ways that we heal is coming together. And that's heart coherence.
Yes.
And their organization in Santa Cruz was surrounded by the fires that took your home and made it to a 1/4 mile from his house, surrounded the HeartMath organization. They survived with no infrastructure. All of their water, their electric, their everything is gone. But there's something special when you're writing about groove and you're writing about us coming together. And
That's
that
right.
you went through this commonality, this common process.
Yeah, the coherence and the incoherence. We know what incoherence feels like, and we know what coherence feels like, and that's groove. And when our hearts are beating together, and there's a synchrony, entrainment occurs. We see that in conversations like this. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm just drawn to reach out to you, is that when we talk, and there's a coherence, right? There's a when you hear music you love from a musical group that you love, and they are grooving. They don't always groove, but when they do, you can tell. It's like everybody's feet leave the floor. Everybody in the room is, just floating a little bit higher. We see it with sports as well. We see it in music and sports and all kinds of performances and group activities. That idea of groove is something I'll be exploring more and sharing with you So when I think about resilience, that the fire brought me that answer. And so,
Cool.
yeah.
So last couple things. Last real question before I ask for your URL, but since it's the logo that was supposed to be going on our car, but that's a whole nother story. The phoenix rising from the ashes. What does that mean to you at this moment?
Wow, that's a big one. I think I think I just need to stay kind of in awe of that concept and in the unknowing of it right now. I appreciate the metaphor and the inspiration of the concept. And honestly, right now, I feel small and very weak. I don't feel like any part of me is a rising phoenix of any sort. So I'm in awe of that concept and maybe a student to it. And in 3 years I might have a different answer. But I feel fragile, weak, not resilient. In fact, maybe I've portrayed something else during this conversation, but the reality is I don't feel strong. I don't feel resilient. I don't feel like a phoenix. I don't feel like I don't feel that all that creative. Really sad. So I'm in awe of that logo. I'm in awe of that that idea, and I hope to understand it and embrace it soon.
I think Jessica has just brought a rooster in.
Okay.
The show. Are you bringing your rooster in for the show, or he's trying to get to bed? Oh, he's trying to get to sleep. We'll be wrapped up in just a minute. We set up his house in here.
Perfect.
My apologies for yeah, you can set it up. It's okay. For asking one more thing here.
Yeah.
But this goes along with it because what we're talking about is the ultimate surrender. What are your daughters' names?
Grace and Julia. Yeah.
And what you're talking about ultimately is grace.
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. And I wrote her that letter, and began it with dear Grace, and so you could interpret that as a letter to a woman named Grace. You could also interpret it as the dear Grace, dearest Grace, an invitation to grace, the idea, the sentiment, as well as the woman, and I think that's it. I think before I approach anything Phoenix-like, I might just stay in this place of asking for grace, and in healing and in quiet, and just be small and quiet for a while. Yeah.
Perfect circle.
Yeah.
Perfect circle. Where can people go, Jay, to find out more, to find your beautiful work, to find what's coming next?
My suggestion would be that if you use the internet to just look up the idea of blue mind and find other people's uses of it. And that's kind of the approach we've taken, is try to put the science and practice into the hands of others, whether they're creative people or practitioners and healers and therapists. So just go to your browser and type in the phrase blue mind, and then look around. And if there's another term that you want to add to it, if your interest is in lakes, just add that word, and you'll find information about this idea as it pertains to lakes, or sailing or diving or surfing or first responders, or it really is. There's quite a community out there putting Blue Mind into practice, and so I would just encourage people to do that. Do the Google on the internets and find Blue Mind playfully and serendipitously.
Well, you got to do turtles as well. You must do
Yeah.
Blue Mind and turtles.
Turtles.
Has to be done.
Yeah. Throw some keywords into Google and see what you find, and maybe even Google images or the videos, and explore that way. I'd much rather answer like that than sending you to a particular URL, and of course your webpage is the place to be most inspired, and so that's what I'd suggest.
Thank you. So this is very. The next question, I can't wait to. We're going to have to continue this conversation, but I can't wait to see what you say now versus what you say then, because you are, as you're describing it, the ashes right now. You're at the ashes have been washed to their lowest point before they go out to sea to be rebirthed as food.
Plankton.
There we go.
I am totally cool with being plankton food right now. That's about how I feel. I feel like that's the highest calling, is being plankton food. So
sounds pretty good to me. When the time is right.
Yeah.
What words of wisdom or guidance or simply cheering on would you give to everybody with their own fires, their hurricanes, or I don't know a single soul in 2020 who's not being brought to their knees in one way or the other?
You know, the phrase, so I before my daughter left for college, we have these letters, magnetic letters, and we've been spelling things on the boards with these magnetic letters, and I took a bunch of them and put them in her bathroom, and it spelled "get out," which is just it was humorous, an inside joke. But as she became a teenager, she would always just say, "Dad, get out," and I'd say, "You have to say get out, I love you," or "get out, please," or "good morning, get out," but you can't just say get out. And so I put these magnetic letters and said get out. It's just funny because she was leaving for college. And then that phrase, when I was thinking about staying and resisting the fire, that phrase came up again. It was get out. And so it sounds maybe counterintuitive or weak or wimpy or non-warrior like, but that's what comes to mind to your question. Is it hadn't occurred to me until just now, but that phrase is in her bathroom still, and I saw it back here, here at the rental where we are. So get out. When it's time to get out, get out. Don't linger and get burnt to a crisp. Sometimes put down the sword and the shield and just back up. That could save your life, and then you can come back and still be a living warrior rather than a martyr. It's a time and a place to get out. And so Grace got out and she went off to college. I got out and our house burned, but I'm alive.
We're getting out. Those words mean a lot to us here, right now.
Yeah. It's sometimes you think, okay, stay and fight. Okay. But when it's time, it's time. Pack it, hook it up, and pull it out and go. Take your home on your back, be a turtle. Go grab the rooster, hook up the vehicle and head down the road.
Jessica just came back from meeting with a friend on how they're going to make a backpack that carries the rooster. I think I'm actually going to have him on my chest, but so I can strap him to me and we can get out.
Yeah, please send me a photograph of that.
Oh, you'll definitely have it. This is going to be one viral rooster, and it's has nothing to do with us. It's all him.
Yeah, power rooster. Yeah.
Yep.
So you and the rooster and Jessica get out. That you already are. I know you know that, but yeah, that's what comes to mind. And so maybe that'll resonate with people who are thinking, "What am I doing here? Why am I stuck?" And whatever you need to get out of right now, maybe it's time. You know.
I've been saying to everybody, everywhere, if not now, then when? If not now, then when? Every get out, as you're calling it, that we've talked about will someday, I think now, this moment, this nanosecond, is that time.
Yeah. Yeah, and whatever it is that's broken that you need to get out of or get away from, just, put your plan together and activate it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jay. This has been cathartic, healing, awesome, amazing, incredible, heartfelt, difficult, distraught. The whole gamut.
We need to stop meeting like this, Michael. We seem to kind of circle around in those kind of moments, but I really appreciate your insights and your deep wisdom and your big heart and your humor and the fun. I mean, having a fun, enjoyable conversation about losing everything is a hard one to do.
You did.
And I've done it with you twice. So, thank you.
Thank you. And it so goes both ways. And yes, we will have to meet up. Now, I'm not sure the RV is fully getting down as far south as you this time around. But it's actually, it's a journey. It's not just a journey of healing for ourselves. I have a feeling we're going to take this journey to help heal others and spend some time on the road. So I wouldn't imagine if we double back around, and we're definitely called to the area. So
definitely. It'd be good to see you.
It'd be great. So got to crank it back up. I've been kind of in this hasn't been the woohoo thing. We're going to crank it up a little bit. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get blue mind, and begin rising like the phoenix from the ashes, or at least consider becoming plankton food today. And shine bright. Woohoo!
And get the hell out.
And get the hell out now. I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you got the hell out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this latest interview as much as I did. For more on how you can up-level your life, click on the links below for our mini masterclasses, for our boot camps, and for a very limited availability one-on-one coaching with me. Be sure to give this a huge thumbs up if you like this. Leave your comments below, and you can check out more amazing videos here and here. Love you guys so much. Shine bright. Woohoo!